So, welcome to my talk, Knowledge is Power, Empower Your Employees with Odoo. So, first of all, why talk about knowledge? There are two actually very good reasons to talk about that today. So, first of all, we can say that in many professions today, employees are actually knowledge workers. So, what is a knowledge worker? A knowledge worker is a person who has his knowledge as a main asset that he brings to his profession. This is typically true of scientists, of software engineers, but also I would say it's true for most people working at Odoo partners, or also people working in Odoo projects. And the second great reason is actually that we have now, with Odoo 16, this brand new knowledge app. Yesterday there was this talk by Luc Niles who presented this new app. So if you have seen this talk, please let me know by raising your hand. Who has seen that talk already? Okay, thank you so much. That is great. Then allow me to introduce myself. My name is Nicholas Fry. I'm working for BrainTech. BrainTech is an Odoo Gold partner with offices in Switzerland, Germany, Austria and Spain. I'm working with Odoo since 2014 in various roles as project manager, senior consultant, head of training, and also head of business development. I'm really excited to be back here in Brussels for the Odoo experience, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. So, if we talk about knowledge management is actually critical in your company, and this is what I'm going to talk about first. So if you have very knowledgeable people in your company, people with very specific knowledge, that is perfect. But if that knowledge is only in their head, this is actually a liability, this is a problem. So imagine that you have someone with a very specific knowledge about accounting or human resources, and then this person decides to leave the company, or they go on vacation, or they simply become ill. Then that knowledge that is an asset actually becomes a liability or a risk. And the good news is that Odoo has the tools that you need to successfully manage that knowledge. So I'm going to talk about knowledge management strategy using Odoo apps, and I will focus on the following apps. Of course, the new knowledge app that was presented yesterday, then about eLearning, documents, and also the skills app. So if we talk about the knowledge app, this is something that for me is really a game changer in terms of knowledge management and also in terms of Odoo in general, because that brings you documentation at your fingertips. And I will try to highlight why this is important by giving you two examples. So a few years ago, I did a project with a company from Switzerland specialized in materials testing. And so they did some testing if there was a failure in a certain part, let's say in a train or in an aircraft. So those are people who are really thorough, they're really used about documentation and documenting the things that they find. So when I asked them to do documentation of their processes in Odoo, they jumped into that. So that was no issue. They created a really magnificent documentation. The problem was this documentation was outside of Odoo. It was on a Google Drive folder, and we faced the problem that probably all of you know. No one actually reads the fucking manual. This is just something that is true, and we cannot really avoid that, right? So this was a problem we had to deal with in the project as well, and the issue actually came from the fact that the documentation was not inside Odoo. It was in a different place, so it was not easily accessible. People had to look for that. Most of them forgot actually that there was some kind of documentation that they could rely on. And a second example I would like to mention is one from our own apps. So at BrainTech we have a specific Swiss payroll app that we built, and in the beginning the documentation for that was just a documentation platform as well, so outside of Odoo. And then our product team actually came up with a great idea, and that was to include some documentation right within Odoo. So what we did eventually is that there was a smart button on top of any employee form view, on any contract, or just wherever you need it in HR. And if you had any question, there was a link, video tutorial. You could click on that, and right within Odoo, the video would appear and would play. And so the documentation was really where you needed it, right inside Odoo. And for me, this is the main the main point. And with the new Knowledge app, we can actually have that everywhere. So documentation for everything can be now right inside Odoo. And for this, I would like to briefly jump into the new Odoo 16. And we can have a really quick look. So this is the new Knowledge app, like it was presented yesterday. And you can create documentation articles, you can have spaces. So here, for example, we have an HR FAQ where you can find things about expense policies, car policies, leaves and time off. Also something about sales and marketing. And another thing is, let's imagine that you're working on a sale order, for example. So let's briefly go to the sale orders. And I'm creating a new one. And I want to look up something about the policy of creating sale orders. I want to check something in the sales handbook. So what do I do now? Actually, the easiest way is to use the command menu. So with Command K, I jump into this view, and with the question mark, I can search all the articles that are in this Knowledge app. And this is really handy, because here I see, okay, there is the sales and marketing documentation. I click on that, and it takes me straight to the sales and marketing section. I can check the sales playbook. I can have a look at all the templates without leaving my tab. So this is all in the same place. And with one click, I get back to my sale order. I can continue working on that. So this is really documentation at your fingertip. Of course, there are many other great things about the Knowledge app, but yeah, this is not today's topic, actually. And then if we continue, I would like to talk briefly about the eLearning app as well. So the eLearning app, if you're talking about knowledge management in a company, you can use it for the onboarding, for certification, for refresher training. And we actually know that this works really well, because Odoo is using that. Odoo is now a company with roughly 2,000 employees. And they use that for onboarding, they use that for the training, they use that for the certification. And just an example, what we do as BrainTech internally, so we encourage people to do certification in agile methodologies, so like a Scrum Master, Product Owner. And if someone passes such a certification, we manage that also with the Skills app, but of course we have the eLearning app as well that we use for the training of our new employees, and we are very happy to have that as well. So for those of you not too familiar with that, I would also like to briefly go into that. So this is part of the Odoo website. You can build your courses. Here we see an example about gardening and trees. And it's really easy to create your own content. Maybe you have already seen a talk about a new website builder. This is really top-notch. It's very easy, and you can also include some quizzes. So this is not to make people angry because they have to do a test. It's just to get some feedback about the learning progress. You can collect some points. This is actually a really nice thing. Okay, then if we continue with the next app that I want to focus on, we have the Documents app, and this is great because you can add attachments and create workspaces. And I know it sounds trivial, but I do a lot of demos and workshops for potential customers, and very often I get the question, well, where can I actually add attachments? And how many attachments can I add? And what is the file size limit? And what types of files are accepted? And this just shows that in other software solutions, it's not necessarily the case that you can just upload anything anywhere. And with Odoo, you have that just on sale orders, on employees, on contracts, virtually anywhere. And even though this seems simple and trivial, it's actually something that is really important and very useful. Here I would like to add just one small case that I believe is important. So let's say that you do a project with Odoo and you have some documentation, you have maybe specifications, you have some meeting notes or something like that. So what you can do is you can configure your projects in a way that all the documents that you upload on a task directly go to the document space that we see here. So if I go briefly to just one of the tasks that I have, and I will upload just any document. So this is one of the tasks that I have. This is in the project research and development, and down here I can add, of course, an attachment. I will add you do implementation methodology, and if I go back to the documents now, you will actually see in this workspace that I have for my project that this PDF is now uploaded there as well. So it's very easy to centralize the documents that belong to a project, and the same is true if we are talking about HR, if we're talking about finance. So this is something very generic and very useful. Then moving on, we have the skills that I already mentioned as well. And this is really to keep track of the skills, of the skill levels and certifications. I already mentioned how you're using that internally at BrainTech. But you can also think about people that have critical skills in HR, in accounting, that you actually can make that transparent. So if your company is small, you usually know what all the people know, what their abilities are. But if you grow over a certain size, then it becomes more difficult because not everyone knows everyone so well, and it's just impossible to have that kind of knowledge. So it's really good to be able to share that. And also here, I would like to give a really brief impression. So we are looking at an employee right here, and on this employee, we have the list of skills. In this case, we have Abigail with quite a lot of skills. There is also Spanish. If I want to add another language skill, I just click on Add, and I will say there is English as a certain level. So let's say this is also C1. And the interesting part is not just managing that information right here, but also finding the people with a certain skill. So if I go to the list of all my employees, of course I can search here. And my question is, who does actually speak Spanish? So I search for the Spanish skills, and I find that there is Abigail. If I'm looking for someone speaking English, of course I will find that as well, or a Python programmer. So this is what this is really useful for. Okay, then moving on, I also want to talk not only about the knowledge management within your company, but also knowledge management in Odoo projects. So this is something where I believe that the new apps really excel, and you can really boost your Odoo projects with a good knowledge management. And I would like to give you a few insights on how you can do this in your own Odoo project. So if you're a Odoo consultant or if you're using Odoo internally, those are just a few tips that you can use. So first of all, the knowledge app. This is something that you can use for documentation, for meeting notes, also to document your roadmaps. And the recommendation is actually to use Odoo productively from day one. So don't wait for a long time until things are implemented, and then after that, okay, you start talking about first go live. Really go live on day one. This is such a game changer because people get used to that really soon. They get familiar with Odoo, and this makes your life much, much easier. And I believe the knowledge app can actually be one of the first things to introduce in a project. Then also the e-learning. If you start a new project, why not create an e-learning course where you have some information about the project, about the organization, the team members, and you can also use that for training, that you say, okay, there is the standard Odoo training, but you can also create custom courses so that people are finding their way faster in Odoo. And another thing that sounds actually simple, but using the Documents app for file sharing is powerful as well. So usually when you do a project kickoff, you talk about the way of communication, how to share the files that you have. And there again, I think in most cases the answer should be, we are going to use Odoo. This is our main tool. This is what we are going to use. And the documents, you can share them with anyone. You can also request documents. By the way, this is a really cool feature. And like this, you have a good basis for that. And also the skills. When we do a project at BrainTech, we always see what kind of sprints, what kind of project phases do we have. So maybe we have one about human resources, and then we know that we will need to have the experts from the customer for payroll, for example. And we cannot do a critical implementation of something if those people are absent. So we need to know who has the critical knowledge, and we need to make sure that they are there when we do this part of the project. So if you manage their skills in Odoo from the start right away, you can see that, and then you're much better prepared for the project that is to come. So what are the benefits if you choose this approach of going live with Odoo on the first day and using this knowledge management strategy? One is the early go live. And if you have read the Odoo implementation methodology, it says go live early. If you delay the go live, it will always create much more problems. So as soon as the customer is live, he's used to Odoo, and everything else that you will do with him is just really easier. And also the improved adoption. If you only start with manufacturing, and the first things that people will do in Odoo is complicated manufacturing planning, or if there is a complex purchasing scenario, it's tough for the users to get inside that. But if they have already worked with Odoo because they have seen the knowledge app, maybe the project app, they have seen the skills, then they already have the Odoo mindset. And of course, change management is important. And like this, you can make the change more gradual. And this is what helps you with the adoption of the users. And then, last but not least, I'm coming back to documentation. So if you go this way, if you choose this strategy, then I'm sure that you will have much better documentation. So you have the documentation right inside Odoo, where you need that, where your users are, and this is what I believe that matters most when we talk about documentation. Okay, so this is it. Thank you so much for joining my talk. Thank you for your time. If you have any questions, I will be glad to answer them now. Okay, thank you so much. Enjoy your Odoo experience. Okay, so we have a question.
Thank you very much. Very interesting. I have a question regarding the e-learning app. Is it possible to import external content? Like I have created the content with the third app. Is it possible to integrate it in the e-learning module?
Yeah, so if you have content like a video or if you have PDF, then this is something that you can import easily. This is good. If this is from a different platform, let's say if this is from Confluence, for example, I'm not quite sure, but I know that there was a talk recently that you can also extract content from a website, and maybe with this it could become much easier as well. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as I understood you properly, the idea is to build the documentation then from the very beginning directly in the new knowledge app, or what's the strategy?
Yeah, the strategy would really be to use the knowledge app from the beginning, from day one, to create the documentation. And again, this is what you can use to bring the users in Odoo, to have them read the documentation. And in the projects that we do, this is actually mandatory to have this good documentation from the start. And it's really crucial because you need that not only during the project, but also after the end of the implementation phase. Because usually you have a team that will take over for the support and maintenance, and this is not necessarily the same team. So you have the documentation already there, it is prepared, and your support and the maintenance team can take over from there. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you keep the knowledge in your own personal database, or do you keep it in the client's database?
It depends on about what kind of knowledge we're talking. If this is a knowledge, let's say knowledge that is specific to a customer project, I would keep this in the customer database. So I feel this is where it belongs, and also the customer probably wants to use that documentation there. If it is something that we use only internally, then we keep that internal. But as soon as it is a customer project, I would say it has to be in the customer database. Okay, thank you.
Could you imagine knowledge being used as an internal wiki or something like that? An internal wiki, like a, yes.
Yeah, I think you can actually use that as an internal wiki. I mean, the features are not exactly the same, and there are some things about versioning that you probably need to look into. As far as I understood right now, the versioning is actually something that you can see in the chatter, so in the notes on a knowledge article. So be aware of the fact that there are some differences, but I believe that the advantage of having the documentation right inside Odoo outweighs any disadvantages that you might have. Yeah. Thank you. Okay, if there are no more questions, thank you so much. Enjoy the day.